What if the very thing holding you back as a leader isn't your expertise, but your fear of speaking up? That's exactly why I first turned to today's guest, Deborah Shames. I struggled with public speaking, and she became my coach. The tools she gave me changed how I show up as a leader. Deborah is the co-founder of Eloqui, a premier communication training firm, and author of Out Front: How Women Can Become Engaging, Memorable, and Fearless Speakers. She's trained leaders across industries to project confidence, command authority, and stop blending in by copying men. Deborah shows women how to own their identity, their voice, and their power every time they walk into the room. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thanks.
Deborah, you know how important you are to me because I had a fear of public speaking for my entire law enforcement career. When I was in the Army as a brand new private first class, they sent me out to go to an entire battalion and talk about subversion and espionage against the Army, something I had just learned about. I got up in front of everyone and I froze. And that impacted my entire law enforcement career moving forward when it came to avoiding speaking as much as I possibly could. And then I met you and David, and you really changed everything for me. So, can you talk a little bit about what you love to do when it comes to public speaking?
I do, because the old fashioned way of speaking doesn't work. It was very formulaic. It was tell a joke and gesture a certain way and tell them what you're going to tell them again. All of that makes people terrified. And so, with you and our other clients, it's bringing out your voice and it's knowing that you have something of value to give to an audience. And you are one of our favorite students because you picked it up quickly and you connected with an audience and you were conversational. Now, that doesn't mean you're not professional, but being conversational, speaking in specifics, and really making a connection, it's everything.
Well, and you wrote a book specifically for women in order to help them be better public speakers.
Yeah.
Why did you choose women to write your book about?
Because over the last 10 years, I had so many talented women. They had multiple careers. They were incredibly capable, and yet they held themselves back. They refused to speak because they would say to me, well, Deborah, I'm not an expert enough, or somebody knows more than I do. And so I wrote Out Front: How Women Can Become Engaging, Memorable, and Fearless Speakers, because I wanted to give women like you the confidence and the tools so that you could be successful.
You know, it's funny because when I am working in real life, when I was in the Army or when I was working at the FBI, I used to say I had my cop voice. So whenever I needed to be heard, whenever I
Yes.
needed to arrest
Yes.
someone, I would go out and I would use that cop voice. And yet, when you put me on a stage in front of a lot of people, everything changed. Why do you think that is?
I know exactly why it is. Because when you're on a stage, all eyes are on you. And that little voice in our head says, I'm not good enough. Why did I decide to do this? Maybe somebody else is better. And to shut off that voice is really the first thing I need to do. So I let women know, and men, that they need to put their full attention out on the audience, that they have something of value to give. And then it's not following old templates. So it's not doing the wind up or talking about how you're an expert in something, but it's really sharing what you know and telling stories and being specific. And you picked up on that really quickly.
Well, and that's one thing that you brought out in me is you learned that I love to tell stories. And so
Yeah.
really whenever I would go out and speak and you would help me,
Yes.
we would really focus on the stories. And that's kind of where I would get more secure and more confident whenever I was up on a stage.
What David and I have developed at Eloqui at our company are templates. So there's a storytelling template. There's a template for structuring presentations. There are roles that you can take on, like motivator or seasoned veteran. And when you have those safety nets and you have those templates, you can break them, but at least you won't be left going, oh my God, what do I do now? Or freezing and having anxiety, like you shared in that story, will often stop people from ever speaking out. And that's a shame.
Yes. When I did my TEDx talk,
Yes.
I took every piece of advice that you and David gave me and every other coaches that I've ever spoken with or who had ever tried to help me with my public
Yes.
speaking. And, when I did it, I did my warm up like you told me to. And I really breathed so I didn't
True.
lose my voice. And, the interesting thing out of all of these years, and I had been on stages before that, it was really the first time that I really felt that connection. And it was interesting because the lights were so bright, I couldn't see
Yes.
anyone in the room, but I knew that they were there. And so it was really kind of a turning point for me when I did that TED Talk was the understanding the importance of connecting with the audience. And that was something that you told me about in the very beginning.
It's funny that you say that because so many times people go, they're judging me and they're judging me harshly. And it's not true. An audience wants you to be good. They want to take away something of value. And stage fright stops us because when you're experiencing stage fright, you can't be yourself and you can't make that
Mhm.
connection. And so you need to be prepared, but you don't want to be over prepared. You never want to memorize your talk or really read from a script. So if you work off an outline and you know what you want to get across, and then you start in low ante situations, you don't start with a TED talk like you did. You might start with a lunch and learn or introducing someone on a panel. It makes all the difference. And pretty soon there's an adrenaline rush when you go, send me in, coach, because when you see people responding, or you imagine they're responding and they're not on their phones. There's nothing better. And interestingly enough, what many of us do is when we leave one thing out from a presentation, we go, well, what if I do that again? And so it'll stop you. But instead, if you go, it's a process. And no one was ever born a great speaker, Gina. Then you will get out there and you can make a difference in the world. And that's what I love, being behind the scenes and knowing that people I've coached and trained are making a difference in the world.
That really resonates with me as far as going up and just being yourself and being authentic. But it really is kind of building a muscle because in the very
Yeah.
beginning, of course, I was so nervous.
Yes.
But fast forward to the TEDx talk, I wasn't nervous at all. And that
Wow.
is an absolute miracle. But I had to go through that journey that you talk about in order to be able to get there. So it could definitely happen, but it takes a lot of practice.
There's something else too. David and I wrote an article that was published in Fast Company just last year, and it's called Everything You've Learned About Public Speaking is Wrong. So because we tend to imitate other people, a lot of women will say to me, well, that's not me. And I go, exactly. So why are you imitating people that are not like you? Yes,
Hmm.
watch people that you enjoy, that you think are really good, and pick up a skill or something. But bottom line, have structure, have an intention, have a role, and give yourself opportunities the way you did. And I guarantee you will be successful. And I don't care
Yes.
if you're an introvert. I don't care if people tell you that, or you have an accent. Bring all those qualities because that's what will connect you to any audience.
I equate public speaking to leadership when it
Yes.
comes to when you lead authentically, when you speak authentically, that is when you are the best at what you do. So let's talk a little bit about when we go out onto the stage and how
Yeah.
we present ourselves.
Yes. There's so many tips and techniques. First of all, there are ways that you can show up that has executive presence. So just by opening your shoulders, just by lifting your chin just slightly, gesturing normally. I hear all the time, oh, I was told I use my hands too much. Well, I'm Jewish. So whether you're Jewish or Italian, use your hands, bring oxygen into your lungs, and you will last longer. Warm up your voice. Drink room temperature water. Eat grapes and apples. They will lubricate your voice. If you talk a lot, suck on a Ricola, then get rid of it before you speak. And get oxygen in between a number of virtual sessions because it is exhausting. Like any actor will tell you, you're in a close up and people are looking at you. So know that you have to take care of your voice and yourself. Wear blue like you're wearing, Gina, to be seen as approachable and trustworthy. These are all the tips of the pros. And always have an intention. Not that you will educate an audience, but that you will persuade them to take an action or see you in a certain light. Intention drives everything.
So, Deborah, when we talk about leadership,
Yes.
how in a leadership position, whether you're sitting at the table or you're, out speaking with clients or you're trying to sell something, how do we come off as our perfect self in those type of situations?
I can tell you where you don't come off as your perfect self, especially women. When you speak in long run on sentences, not only can you think ahead, you can't think ahead with long run on sentences, but an audience
Mhm.
or the people you're leading cannot absorb what you have to say. Next, make eye contact around the room. Make sure people know that you include them. Because when you look down, it says you're not confident. And then know what you want to achieve and have no more than 3 talking points per meeting, per presentation, because we can absorb more than 3 at a time. And
Mhm.
it's hard for speakers to think ahead. Lastly, we judge you by your verbs. So make sure you have active verbs. Help, try, assist are weak verbs. If your listeners want, I can send you 500 active verbs so you never have to use that dreaded word help again. Because a leader can assess, negotiate. Those verbs say to us, we may not know why, but we know either that we're responding to you or we're not. Part of it's just your verbs.
That is a great list. I have that list. Do you want to tell people how they can get that?
Yes, for people to get the list, all they have to do is email me, dshames@eloqui.biz. I'm sure you'll give them the contact information, but I would love to be there for your listeners.
Absolutely. We will put those into the show notes. You talked a little bit about things that we need to do to get
Yes.
the
Yeah.
attention. One time when I was speaking at a women in tech conference, where one of the women said when she was at the table, she would speak and then people would speak over her. So what recommendations do you have in that type of a scenario so that you can hold your ground and really be heard?
There's a number of techniques. When you have the opportunity to speak up, don't do either long run on sentences like we mentioned before, or take a while to wind up. Go right for the whole idea because that's how people make decisions. It's with our right brain first, the whole idea, shared emotions, values, and then add some left brain stats if you need to. When you make sense and you are confident about what you're talking about, you'll be listened to. I never have that trouble of having people not listen to me. And I'm 5'2". Show up as yourself and know you want to make a difference.
And what I love about you, Deborah, is every time I call you, every time I'm getting ready to do a speech, you're always there to answer any questions that I have. And that's all part of working with Deborah Shames. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being on the show.